litigate cases all over the world. You have to look at the political, the legal, and the military aspects. It's a geopolitical situation with has a beyond the military.
Beyond that, Gaza is one sector in a worldwide front between two civilizations. The Islamofascism on one hand and the democracies on the other hand. Israel is in the first line of confrontation with this brutal culture of hatred and religious fanaticism.
They took us to where the rockets were kept, where you saw these rockets that had fallen. They took us to this area. We filmed in front of the area, and these had just fallen in the last few weeks, and there were dozens of them.
These are actual rockets that have landed in this very town. Some of them within the last week. In fact, the ones right over here just came down in the last few days, last few weeks. So you see the nature of what these towns have been experiencing from Hamas. Rami Levy, of course, is a very good friend of ours. He's been on the program with us many times in a variety of different capacities. Rami's helping us here in Israel, directing our efforts on a variety of fronts. But we've obviously had, Rami, a very special, significant situation in the last 24 hours. What's the sense right now in the people that you're talking with within government, within the military? What's the sense of the significance of this incursion into Gaza?
Well, there's two parts we are talking about. The first significance is the fact that children of Israel, hundreds of thousands of children, were under a threat of these missiles. These are very heavy missiles that actually killed children in this city. 3 children were killed, children lost their legs and arms, and for years they were under threat. Children had 15 seconds to run into bomb shelters in order not to be killed or injured, and we've been trying to stop that for a few years.
What's the sense of the Israelis on the street, your relatives? You said you had relatives right in this area. Talk about that for a moment. I think it's important to understand what Israelis are going through living in these communities.
Well, the way I could describe it is imagine that from the Mexican border, San Diego would be bombarded. And imagine that your relatives living in San Diego on every minute would be threatened by being killed. Their children wouldn't be able to go and play outside. You saw there are no people in the streets here. So if we compare it to any situation around the world, imagine a mile away from you, terrorists shooting at you. So from our perspective, this is a must. It's a must operation. We're not going to stop it until Hamas stops shooting. And yes, they're continuing to shoot as of now. Only today they shot at this very city, but I think it's going to come down.
This is a unique aspect of what we do at the American Center for Law and Justice, the ECLJ, that not a lot of groups can do or talk about.
Well, absolutely, Jay. And we're here regarding the issue of Gaza, whether it's defending Israelis or defending Palestinian Christians. This area is really a problem. And yes, there are a lot of Christians in the Middle East. There are a lot of Christians in Israel. And the ones in Gaza really need protection because the Islamic forces there are trying to crush them.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. And we're seeing that. And literally, that's not figuratively, that's literal. Let me get Jordan in here for a second.
But I want everyone to look really close and see what's behind here. Because in the coming weeks, when this program's airing, you're going to see Muslim activists on TV condemning Israel and saying what Israel did was wrong and saying that they've killed innocent civilians. But you look behind here, not one of these was aimed at a military base or the police station where we're at. These are aimed at schools, they're aimed at children. And that's what you got to look at. If you look down this strip here and you look down, this is at the police station here. But these were aimed at kids. This wasn't aimed at the police station that we're at. This wasn't aimed at the Air Force Base or the other institutions. This was aimed at children. And so when you hear the criticism of Israel the next 2 weeks, and you will, and when this broadcast is airing, you'll see that from the Muslim world. Remember these rockets behind us here. And remember that these were aimed at little kids just a couple of miles away from the Gaza Strip.
I mean, you realize your adrenaline is pumping 1,000,000 miles an hour. As we go back to the town square in Sderot, and we're all in kind of different locations there. I was running in to use the restroom. Some other guys were going to grab some drinks for the car. And it was in a hair salon that let me run in and use their restroom because there was so much media, there was a lot of media around. And I started hearing people screaming. That's pretty uncommon too. Every time the siren goes off, people don't scream. But what happens is when there's a lot of people stuck out in the middle of a road, that's when it's dangerous. My theory was we should all stay together, but I think it was, we had been through rocket attacks already that day, and so we were, quote, used. This is what happens. You get this psychology where you're used to it. But our security grabbed me. I didn't even know where Jordan was. I think he was going into
to the restroom because we're getting ready to go back to Jerusalem. I mean, literally. Stuart Roth was with us, I think was going to look at a newspaper or something. And we're all in these different locations. And I didn't want to be pushed into a bomb shelter where I didn't know where Jordan was. I didn't know where our staff was.
When the siren goes off, and you know you got 15 seconds, so you count it off in your head. Now after that, you just kind of sit there for a few seconds waiting. Is it going to come down on our head? Is it going to come down on some school? Is it going to kill some kid or some family who's in a bus stop? What's about to happen? And then you hear it.
And they're literally grabbing you and pushing you because you get behind these cement bomb shelters. They're very small. And the one I was in, it was crammed in pretty tight. I mean, there wasn't an inch. The one Stuart Roth was in, they were selling sandwiches. They just are so used to it there.
You wait to hear the explosion. You hear the explosion. You wait a few minutes, and you get in the van and you drive off. And literally, I think that was a different experience too. Here's a guy getting his hair cut, you know, knowing that he's getting his hair cut while this hair salon's open. And on TV is the news, and the news is their city getting bombed and their city getting rocket attacked, but life doesn't stop. And I imagine here, like what would we be like where we're filming this today if it was possible that every 15 minutes there was going to be a siren going off and rockets coming through? And how would we react to that? And how would that change life here in the United States? Whereas these people for 8 years have been dealing with this 24 hours a day.
The fact of the matter is, as difficult as it is for them to live there, they know that that's where they have to be. I mean, you can't keep running away from out of your country.
We get into Bethlehem. We've got a great security team there, a great Palestinian security team. And it was, listen, this was important for all of us as we continue to engage the international world to show it's not just about going to Israel, that we are not afraid, and we're also not going to stop from showing you what's going on in the West Bank. And we actually got to go for the first time in our lives, all the times we've been to Israel, to get to see the Church of the Nativity, which is something we had not done before because of security concerns, even in the West Bank. So we made an effort to also visit the Church of the Nativity, which is a powerful site, like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Of course, they've got where it's believed that that's where the manger was set up. And going back on historical records, you could figure out where the mangers were at that time. And so that was an important part of our trip as well that day.
I watched as Jordan met Pauline. I took a step back because this was his thing. And I took a step back to watch this reaction, and it was pretty amazing. Pauline, it was a relationship build. You had to build a relationship. And Jordan had spoken to her dozens of times, probably 100 times more than that on the phone over a 5-day period. And she knew one thing, that groups around the world were talking about getting her out, and she wasn't out. And we didn't do a lot of talking. We did a lot of moving and legal work and diplomacy, and she was out. So she knew one thing, that when we said we were going to get her out, we got her out. Pauline's reaction is different, but Rami's mother's reaction. Even though she spoke no English, she knew exactly what we had done.
And that's, of course, a very emotional experience for all of us, I think. One is because you saw each other on television, and I saw their news stories. They saw me on our website. I saw them on their website about the family that they had actually put up to give support to Pauline, that one of the organizations had put up. So instead of, though, jumping right into cameras and kind of an uncomfortable setting, we said, let's just go to dinner. So we bring the entire family to a restaurant in Bethlehem, and we've got some translators there so everybody can talk. And in a way, it's able for us, we learned so much more about the story because we had been doing these calls, worried that people may have been listening in, always concerned, hearing some of the sad stories, hearing some of the funny stories with the family, and just being able to sit there, talk, get to know each other. Everyone felt like they knew each other, especially me and the family members. We had spent so much time on the phone and so much time talking. But to be able to sit there and just talk about who we were, who am I personally to them, past just the voice they've heard on the phone, and knowing